In the small, picturesque village of Husadhng, nestled among the rolling hills of northern China, life moved at a gentle pace. The villagers worked hard in the rice paddies and tea fields, and in the evenings, they gathered to share stories of heroes and legends.
Among these tales, one story was told more often than any other: the story of the great warrior Mulan.
Mulan was the only child of Fa Zhou, a retired soldier who had served the emperor with distinction.
Although her father was proud of his service, his body had been worn down by years of battle.
His back ached, and his legs were stiff, but his spirit remained strong.
Mulan loved her father deeply and admired the strength he had shown in defending their homeland. One day, a decree arrived from the emperor. Invaders from the north had crossed the Great Wall, threatening the empire.
Every family was ordered to send one male to join the imperial army and defend China from this new threat. For Fa Zhou, there was no choice.
Despite his age and frailty, he would answer the call of duty, for it was the honorable thing to do.
But Mulan could not bear the thought of her father going to war.
She knew that in his condition, he would not survive the brutal conditions of the battlefield. Yet, as a woman, she was not permitted to fight. The laws of the land were clear. Only men could serve in the army. Determined to protect her father and uphold the honor of her family, Mulan made a bold decision. She would disguise herself as a man and take her father's place in the army. It was a dangerous plan, but Mulan knew it was the only way to save her father from certain death.
On the night before her father was to leave for the army, Mulan snuck into the family's ancestral shrine.
She knelt before the statue of her ancestors and prayed for guidance. Then, with trembling hands, she cut off her long, flowing hair, symbol of her femininity, and bound her chest with cloth.
She donned her father's old armor and took up his sword, which had been passed down through generations of the Fa family. As the first light of dawn touched the sky, Mulan left her home, riding her father's horse deep into the mountains. There, she joined a group of young recruits who were also on their way to the army's training camp.
None of them suspected that the slender, quiet man among them was actually a woman.
At the training camp, Mulan adopted the name Ping and threw herself into her new life as a soldier. The training was grueling, designed to break the recruits down and build them back up into warriors. Mulan struggled at first. Her body was not as strong as the other men's, and she lacked the experience they had. But what she lacked in strength, she made up for in determination. Day after day, Mulan pushed herself harder, practicing late into the night when the others were asleep.
She studied the techniques of sword fighting, archery, and hand-to-hand combat.
She learned how to move swiftly and silently, and she paid close attention to the tactics taught by the commanding officers. Slowly but surely, she began to improve.
The other soldiers began to notice her progress.
They had initially written her off as weak and unfit for battle, but as time went on, they started to respect Ping for his perseverance. Mulan made friends among her fellow soldiers, though she always kept a careful distance, fearful that her true identity might be discovered.
The day finally came when Mulan's unit was called to the front lines.
The invaders had pushed deeper into the empire, and the situation was growing dire.
The imperial army was outnumbered and outmatched by the ruthless warriors from the north, who were known for their ferocity and skill in battle.
As the soldiers marched to meet the enemy, Mulan felt a mixture of fear and resolve. She had trained for this moment, but nothing could fully prepare her for the reality of war. The clash of steel, the cries of the wounded, and the sight of blood soaking the ground were all overwhelming. In the heat of battle, Mulan fought with everything she had. She remembered her father's teachings and the stories of the great warriors who had come before her. She moved with agility and precision, dodging blows and striking with her sword.
But even as she fought bravely, the enemy's numbers seemed endless. During a critical moment in the battle, the imperial army found itself surrounded by the enemy, with no escape route in sight.
The commanding officer, General Li, realized that they were on the brink of defeat.
He ordered his men to retreat, but their path was blocked by a narrow mountain pass that the enemy had fortified with archers. It was then that Mulan saw an opportunity. She noticed that the enemy's position was vulnerable from above, where a series of snow-covered cliffs overlooked the pass. If she could trigger an avalanche, it might create a diversion, giving the imperial army a chance to escape. Without hesitation, Mulan broke away from the main force and scaled the cliffs, moving quickly despite the freezing wind and the treacherous footing. When she reached the top, she planted the remaining explosives she had scavenged from the battlefield, lighting the fuses with shaking hands.
She then took cover as the explosion rocked the mountain, sending a massive wave of snow cascading down onto the enemy below. The avalanche buried the enemy archers and created a cloud of snow and debris that confused and disoriented the invaders.
General Li seized the moment and ordered his troops to charge through the pass, cutting down the remaining enemy soldiers and escaping to safety.
Mulan's actions had saved the lives of many soldiers, but she had been injured in the process. As the army regrouped, she collapsed from exhaustion and was carried back to camp by her comrades.
Back at the camp, Mulan's injuries were tended to by the medics. It was during this time that her true identity was discovered.
The medics, while treating her wounds, realized that Ping was, in fact, a woman.
The news spread quickly through the camp, and Mulan was brought before General Li.
The soldiers who had fought alongside her were shocked and confused.
They had come to respect Ping as a brave and capable warrior, but now they felt betrayed by the deception.
General Li was furious. In his eyes, Mulan had broken the law and dishonored the army.
He ordered her to be imprisoned and prepared to have her face trial for her actions.
But before the trial could take place, news arrived that the enemy was preparing for one final, decisive attack on the capital city.
Despite his anger, General Li knew that Mulan's actions had saved many lives. He couldn't deny her courage or the value of her strategic thinking.
With the fate of the empire hanging in the balance, he made a difficult decision. He released Mulan from prison and asked for her help in defending the capital.
The army was weakened, and they needed every capable fighter they could get. Mulan agreed, not for herself, but for the people she had sworn to protect: her family, her village, and her country. The Imperial Army, with Mulan now officially by their side, made their final stand at the gates of the capital. The enemy forces were larger and better equipped, but Mulan had a plan. She had spent time studying the layout of the city and knew that the narrow streets and high walls could be used to their advantage. Mulan proposed a strategy that involved luring the enemy into the city and then trapping them in a series of ambushes. She suggested using the city's fireworks as symbol of celebration and joy as makeshift explosives to disorient and confuse the invaders.
The plan was risky, but General Li, recognizing Mulan's brilliance, decided to trust her judgment. The soldiers worked quickly to prepare the city, setting up traps and stockpiling the fireworks.
When the enemy finally arrived, they were met with fierce resistance at the gates.
The Imperial army fought valiantly, but they gradually retreated, drawing the invaders into the heart of the city.
Once the enemy was deep inside, Mulan gave the signal.
The fireworks were ignited, filling the night sky with bursts of color and thunderous explosions. The invaders were caught off guard, their ranks thrown into chaos as the city itself seemed to erupt around them.
Mulan led a small group of soldiers through the streets, using their knowledge of the terrain to strike the enemy from all sides.
The battle was intense, but Mulan's strategy worked. The invaders, disoriented and demoralized, began to fall back.
The Imperial army pressed their advantage, driving the enemy out of the city and into full retreat.
In the aftermath of the battle, the capital was saved, and the invaders were forced to withdraw from the empire entirely.
The people of China rejoiced, celebrating their victory and honoring the soldiers who had fought to protect them.
Mulan's bravery and intelligence had turned the tide of the war.
The emperor himself acknowledged her contributions, and though it was highly unusual, he publicly praised her as a hero of the empire. The soldiers who had once doubted her now looked up to her with admiration and respect.
Despite the emperor's offer of a position in his court, Mulan chose to return to her village. She had fulfilled her duty and longed to reunite with her family.
When she arrived home, her father was waiting for her, his eyes filled with pride, land, inspiring countless others.
She had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, not through brute strength, but through her cleverness, determination, and unwavering love for her family and country. In the end, Mulan's tale became one of the most cherished stories in all of China. Story of an underdog who rose to greatness, not because she was born into power or privilege, but because she had the heart of a true warrior.